Welcome back. It's been said that if someone who died in 1910 came back in 2010, they would be overwhelmed by the sweeping changes to society. The ways we travel, work, and communicate have all been revolutionized. The one institution that would look familiar, a haven from change, would be schools. That may be a bit of an exaggeration, but despite widespread complaints about the output of our school systems, affecting meaningful change has proven almost impossible. If you haven't seen the documentary, Waiting for Superman, you owe it to yourself to see it. But remember, since the movie was finished, one of the innovators featured in that film, Michelle Rhee, the superintendent of Washington, D.C. public schools, has been forced out of office. Educational think tanks and reformers are everywhere. Many work on the national level, but many others are local. I am joined this morning by a Cincinnati woman who is passionate about school reform. Mary Welsh Schlueter is the founder of the Partnership for Innovation in Education, PI. Ms. Schlueter is a parent of 4 children, 3 of whom are in Cincinnati public schools. 1 will be there next year. In 2009, she ran unsuccessfully for Cincinnati Board of Education. In 2010, just last month, or earlier this month, unsuccessfully for the Ohio Board of Education. Mary, welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about PI and what it is, and a key to the whole thing is the website, and we'll be able to see a little bit, but what is the partnership?
Right. PI, there are 3 objectives for PI, and I call them FRC. First, it facilitates the discussion about innovation within the education system. So essentially, we look at all stakeholders. I tell everyone, unless you're sitting on a desert island, you have an interest in education reform. So first, we facilitate conversations on the education network on pimedia.org. Second, we collaborate. We look at all the different stakeholders and players who are involved in PI, who become involved in PI, and look at how we can create beta templates for actually educational innovation, specifically to accelerate academic achievement, but also how do you look at accelerating achievement within financial guidelines, within teaching guidelines, curriculum, whether it's pre-K, K through 12, graduate, postgraduate, when you're 55 and you're looking to look at education. Education and education reform really looks at also economic development. Education just isn't children sitting in chairs. It's how do you impact the educational infrastructure and make that impactful on the economic development structure. I think a big Harvard study just came out, in fact I know it did, that said educational infrastructure guides economic development reform. A healthy economic infrastructure is guided and informed by a impactful and dynamic education infrastructure.
You know,
and the third is replicate. You know, we look at how do we create new beta opportunities for accelerating academic achievement, and then how do we replicate that beyond just that regional opportunity, and how do we create opportunities for that beyond?
You know, and we can take a look at a piece of the website here at any time, but here we go. You see the welcome page, and there's a lot of options on this. One of the things that strikes me is that what you're doing is this is a place on the web that people can go and see articles that are being published from all over the United States, right, being kept in touch with the sort of the conversation that's going on. It's one thing to know what's happening locally. It's very hard to keep in touch with all those publications. But the point is, how do you sift through all that stuff? There's so much information out there. There's so many people with ideas. Does PI have any approach about saying this is a good idea, this is not a good idea, this is a better idea, both are good but this is better? Do you try to evaluate the different proposals?
Absolutely. Well, essentially we're looking at benchmarks. We're seeing, has this idea been implemented even on the small scale? And if it has, what are some of the benchmarks? What are some of the success factors? And so we look at not just is this a good idea, but is this actionable? This is an idea that isn't just someone thought up one day and we want to carry out, but is this an idea that is actionable, has been carried out, and can we have some examples of the success factors? So absolutely. We get so much mail every day, and we're looking at edupreneurs, people who are educational entrepreneurs. We look at profiling them as long as they have something to say and they have something actionable that we can actually put out there and put out there as a potential program.
As you're looking at all the things that are being talked about in terms of reform of, let's say, center city schools, urban schools.
Right.
What do you think are the couple of things that are most important or potentially hold the most impact if we would pursue them?
Well, actually, Michelle Rhee, we are looking to do a PI piece on her. So I think it shouldn't come as any surprise that PI is very much about educational reform. And that has many different opportunities. I know Melanie Bates talks about portfolio schools. And we look at that as definitely an opportunity.
And what are portfolio
schools? Essentially schools that have some value-added benefit, like SCPA, Woodward Technical, Hughes STEM. I'm looking at opportunities where kids can have the basic learning parameters for a high school or a K through 12, but then they go beyond and say, we're going to teach you something more, an elective that's actually more career driven. And so when you ask what are the things that we can look at for the opportunities for the 21st century, is you want a rigorous curriculum, you want career driven curriculums that help kids look at things, not just college, but what kind of opportunity can you have beyond 12th grade. So when I ran for all my different times for Cincinnati Board and State Board, we looked at areas for incentivizing excellence. And if you talk to Arnie Duncan, whom we have, and we have a piece on Arnie Duncan, he very much does believe in rewarding excellence. And that means across schools, teams, or teachers, how do you incent excellence?
So Arnie Duncan being Secretary of Education.
Correct.
In the current Obama administration.
Correct.
There's been a great deal of discussion about the idea of teacher pay compensation being tagged to student success. And we all know that, at least as we're taping this, there is a logjam on the CPS, Cincinnati Board of Education, and that has been something that a lot of community people have been pushing for to be part of this next contract. How important do you think that is?
I think it's very important. Now, people talk about how much incentive. Does this mean 5%, 10%, 50%? Since we're just starting a program, you can look at 10 to 15% incent. And when you look at Washington, D.C., their incentive was much, much larger. So this is a new.
Was that a mistake to go too big, to go too far, too fast?
Well, if you talk to Michelle Rhee, she got that incentive based on all of private funding. So private funders said the only way that we can make teacher incentive truly palpable is if we look at potentially doubling a true excellent teacher to $130,000 for, then that would. If you were started at 65, 130, that's a significant upgrade for truly star achievers. Now you have to say, define star achievers. Well, when you look at value-added testing, you look at student achievement, a lot of individuals, a lot of teachers, as you know, will talk about how you've got the outliers, you've got the brilliant children, you've got the kids who are harder to teach. But I always say, and value-added testing or testing of any sort will say, there are benchmarks that you can look at to truly see how kids can improve or how they are improving. Okay,
well, I just want to reinforce that if you'd like to follow the work of PI, the website can be found at www.pimedia.org. And on there you'll find blogs, you'll find a lot of the language that Mary was just talking about, the value added, which is very important, the incentive question. So thank you very much for being here, and we'll follow this and see where it goes.
And Dan, can I offer one more thing?
Well, sure.
In the next couple of months, you'll see PI partnering with several different regional communities and educational groups. You'll see more about PI, and you'll be able to actually get involved in the actionable plans that we're talking about.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men working to shape our society for the future. Have a good week.
The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. 2 weeks ago, Civic Ventures announced the winners of the 5th Annual Purpose Prize. The prize was created in 2005 by Civic Ventures with funding from the John Templeton Foundation and the Atlantic Philanthropies to recognize people over 60 who combine their passion and experience for social good. The goal of the prize is to challenge the notion that innovation is the sole province of the young. It holds up mature people who pursue encore careers because they have passion to make change, combined with the experience to know how to do it. One of the winners this year is Cincinnatian Judith Van Ginkel for her work as the founder and leader of Every Child Succeeds. Here is the video produced by the Purpose Prize that explores Judy's work.
I'm a professor of pediatrics at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. I was 60 years old when I began to create Every Child Succeeds. The whole issue around children came to me from the time I was a little girl. I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia. Daddy was a pediatrician. Hello. And he'd take me with him on house calls. There are certain things that can be done in an office, but it's really seeing how the family interacts and what the home looks like. That's what Every Child Succeeds is about. Every Child Succeeds is a home visitation program for first-time at-risk mothers. We visit them in their home from the time the mother is pregnant until the child is 3 years old. When we started, we had no idea that we would have families with as many risk factors. About half of our mothers are clinically depressed. 2/3 of them have witnessed violence or been the victims of violence.
And I saw you guys a couple weeks ago. How are things going? Good. I always bring my first-time moms back kind of for in-between checkups. That's all this is.
We try to address a number of issues with families. Health, literacy, parenting, education, all of the kinds of things that go into creating a stimulating environment where a child can thrive. These mothers recognize that they want to do something different, and they make a commitment to change. That's where the magic is. If she can feel good about herself, she's going to be a much better parent, and her children will benefit.
I am joined now by Judith Van Ginkel, the founder and president of Every Child Succeeds and the winner of one of the 2010 National Purpose Prizes. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you very much.
And most importantly, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
When I saw this come out, I was just fascinated by it, being over 60, and it just seems like a wonderful prize, a wonderful concept. You actually received the prize this past week, right?
I did. There was a summit in Philadelphia where the 60 fellows, and which includes 10 prize winners, came together. 5 of us got $100,000 and 5 others got $50,000. The excitement and the electricity at this summit were just remarkable. Here are people all over 60, all of whom have interesting things that they are doing, feeling passionate about it, eager to get up every morning and continue doing it, to talk to other people. It's just the kind of energy that I think all of us need and want and would like to try and find in our lives.
I love the phrase, encore career. I mean, I just think but I wonder, back in 1999, right, when you started Every Child Succeeds, did you think of it then as an encore career, or were you just moving on to the next thing?
I was just doing something that needed to be done that was of great interest to me. I've never really thought so much about my age, and actually am always surprised by how old I am. It's more about what to do. It's trying to make each day matter, and to do something that both fulfills me and also addresses a need in the community.
Well, I want to get to Every Child Succeeds, but I want to continue to explore this. Do you think about retiring?
No. Someone asked me not too long ago why in the world I was still working. And I said, because I'm the luckiest person I know. I get to work with bright people. I get to address something that needs to be done. We've helped close to 17,000 children now. I'm convinced that the key to aging gracefully is keeping your mind active. My issue happens to be children and young women, but it could be anything. And I would always urge people to look for opportunities. or to take a chance. I mean, sometimes it's taking a chance.
Yeah, that sort of risk-taking. And of course, this is done in the context of Children's Hospital, which is a place that encourages innovation and risk-taking.
That's correct. We have 3 founding partners at Every Child Succeeds: Cincinnati Children's, United Way of Greater Cincinnati, and the Community Action Agency. So that combination certainly raises the level of discourse with regard to what you do and how you do it, making sure that you have validated outcomes, working through a public-private partnership, which a lot of people were very interested in when I was in Philadelphia, because the public-private piece, I think, is key to nonprofit success in what we do and also other endeavors.
When you say public-private, in what sense? I think we would all understand private, that there's private funds raised, that United Way funds involved in this. What's the public element?
The public is the public money.
Government money.
Government money. And you can't run programs like this or others very well on philanthropy alone, although the United Way has been an incredible supporter from the day we started. You need to mix the public monies for programs like this with the private money, and then when you merge those two, you come up with support and a funding stream that allows you to do something that actually produces outcomes that you can validate. And if you can't validate it, that it's working, then maybe you should do something else.
Well, you know, on that point about public-private, in a time when all governments face real squeezes, at a time when we're, 3 weeks after the elections here, we've, in Ohio, just elected a governor who says his priorities is to cut a lot of government programs, including early childhood is one of the things. What do you say about that?
I say we have to do our best. You know, there are a lot of moving parts right now that we have to pay attention to, because we're not sure what the environment is for not only what we do, but others who are in our field as well. The state and the feds are facing tremendous budget deficits. So the question is, what stays? Because it's clear, I mean, you can't continue to operate in Ohio. The budget deficit is somewhere between $4 and $8 billion. It's a lot of money, regardless of who's sitting in the governor's chair.
When you went to Philadelphia for the prize, but also to meet all of those other people, were there other projects that just are people who just fascinated you and you say, whoa, we could use that in Cincinnati?
About every time I met somebody. It's a very humbling experience to be there. It's exciting, it's fun, it's stimulating, it's humbling, because people have found all different ways to do what they're passionate about. I mean, our program is close to an $8 million program. It's a pretty big one. There were people there who have programs that are $100,000 with things that they're doing. There are things in this country. There was a woman who's a doctor who works in Russia. There are 20,000 children, she said, that come into Moscow every year that are put into what she called mobile brothels. There is a woman working in Afghanistan. Somebody else who was a carpenter who is now teaching young disadvantaged boys to be able to work in the construction trades. So, you know, there is no, the only limit is in what people are willing to do. And I think that the whole Purpose Prize concept is one that certainly resonates with the demography that we look at now. We're lucky. I mean, we're living longer than anyone ever has. We're living healthier. Health is important because you do have to have good health to do any of these things. And there are many opportunities. So you wonder, you know, Bismarck was the one who came up with 65, and most, you know, the lifespan now is well beyond that, the expected lifespan.
Which, of course, has all sorts of public policy questions around Social Security and raising that age, and because lifespan has changed so much. And Bismarck's the 1880s. So it is an active question, but it's not only a legal question, it's a mind question, and that's what I find fascinating about this. And if we're going to give people the website where they can go and explore other winners and find out some of these ideas.
There's a book called Encore by a man named Mark Friedman, and he is actually the one who sort of encapsulated all of this into first a book and then the organization that became Civic Ventures. And he was at the conference. It's something he is, as he said, it stuns me when I look out in this room and see all these people doing things. One
of the questions before we transition over to Every Child Succeeds, you were mentioning this prize involved $100,000. What happens to that $100,000?
The $100,000, well, it's a cash award, and I'm giving it to United Way and Every Child Succeeds.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody.
Well, thank you. That's where it belongs, in my view.
Let's talk about Every Child Succeeds. We got a little bit of a glimpse on the video that we saw. How would you describe not just what exists today with young mothers who are at risk, but have things changed since 1999 when you got started on this? Are we, not just because Every Child Succeeds, but other things? Are we making any progress on this? Are we in worse shape? What do you see here?
Well, that's a very good question, because we serve families in 2 states and 7 counties. We serve the 3 northern Kentucky counties, 4 counties in southwest Ohio. And we only meet about 1/3 of the need for our service there. We always have a waiting list. It varies in size.
And are people on that waiting list because they self-identified or because someone in an agency has recommended them?
Both.
Both. Okay.
We try and get our mothers prenatally, and we get about 2/3 of them during that period. All of Every Child Succeeds is based on the science of brain development. That was one of the most important inciting factors that led to this program altogether, because it was John Pepper who read a book called Inside the Brain and came to United Way, where I was on the board, and said, we are not doing what we need to for this youngest population, 0 to 3.
The point is that the vast majority of human brain development is taking place by the time you're 3.
Exactly. And in the 90s, we finally were able to see how that happened, to visualize it. So once you can visualize it, it's hard to ignore it. And so then we set about trying to figure out what programming could look like. I think certainly in this economy, there are more mothers who would be eligible for Every Child Succeeds because low income is one of the screening criteria. But there are many, particularly young women there who need this service. And when they come to us, they do it voluntarily, and they make a commitment.
And it's really
to their child.
This home visitation model is the model that you're working on, which I think it's not only one-on-one, but it's meeting people where they are, meeting people where they live, which I find really fascinating. Don't come to some agency, some building, but we come to you. I find that really fascinating.
Well, one of the most interesting things to me, and it took me a little while to figure this out, I'm not sure why, I grew up in Charleston, West Virginia. My father was a pediatrician there. And when I was little, he would come home and have dinner and take me with him on house calls. And he always believed that if you could see someone in their home place, that you understood the dynamics of what was going on in a way that's very different than you do when you're in a clinic or a doctor's office. And it wasn't until we were well into this that one day I thought, well, here we are, 50 years later, doing home visits.
Yep.
But it works. We're getting great outcomes, and it's a privilege.
Well, I want to be sure that people know how to find this and find everything. To learn more about Every Child Succeeds, the webpage is part of the Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center site, which is very large. The easiest way to see it is to search Every Child Succeeds through your browser, Google or whatever. To talk to someone, call 513-636-4200. To learn more about the Purpose Prize and Encore Careers, check out www.encore.org. You'll really be fascinated. Thank you and congratulations.
Well, thank
again.
you very much.
Okay. If you saw Waiting for Superman, the documentary about improving America's schools, after the break, I'm joined by a Cincinnati woman who isn't going to wait anymore. Stay tuned.